So basically today we are coding a quick Instagram clone. It's going to be the photo grid. And when you click the photo, it should open up a photo modal and display a larger version of the photo with some comments and a sidebar and a like button and things like that. And so this is mostly just to show you the basics of dealing with Elm and how to deal with two different components and how to show or how to embed the components in an actual web page. Because a lot of people want to actually use Elm in real projects, and it's kind of hard to do that when you are using some other framework, and it's the same kind of method you would use with React, where you create a few components, you embed it into the existing framework, somehow you hook into it, and then you just start piecemeal replacing your old framework with the new stuff. So that's kind of what I want to show here with Elm. And also the syntax is very completely different from JavaScript and from CoffeeScript and TypeScript and everything else. So where is sharing screen? Awesome. Whole desktop. Why not? Why not? Okay, cool. So that's annoying. That's not annoying. So the first thing is setting up an actual Elm project. People can see this all right? Yes? Awesome. So we have to install Elm, and then we just do Elm install. Elm package install, something like that. So it's basically asking, do you want the core HTML and virtual DOM package? Core is all the core stuff, lists, maps, all that good stuff. HTML is just like divs, text, links, everything else. And virtual DOM is obviously the renderer. This renderer is really, really quick in comparison to React and Angular. They've done a lot of benchmarks on that. And that was basically it. So that sets up an Elm package.json, and then you have an Elm stuff. And there's a bunch of packages there as well. Doesn't really matter. And so we're going to start with the photo grid. So if you look at Instagram, I like using the example of Canada. Doesn't really matter. The photo grid is just basically, well, that's yeah. So it's just 3 by 3. Yeah, I was maybe not the best choice. Okay. Also, I was told to ask everybody else to mute their mics. So I don't know. I think everything has to go through Zoom chat as well. Yeah. So just, yeah, exactly. Okay, great. So this is Instagram. It has a photo grid, 3 by however many photos there are. So we're going to start with that. And in Emacs, it's going to be photogrid.elm. And I can increase the font size if that's not big enough. So we start by writing a module. And we declare this module photogrid. The naming has to be capitalized because that's how you say it's a module. It's just a regular naming convention that everybody uses anyway. And we're saying that we're exposing basically everything in this module. Next, we have to import the HTML stuff. So I'm going to start with this. Usually you don't, but it's something called beginner program. So this function is, it takes in a record that has 3 fields. So model, a view, and an update. So, oops, typoed. So the first thing you can notice is that as soon as you write an Elm file, nothing will appear on the screen unless you have a main function right here. And the output of the main function is basically the virtual DOM. So you're writing HTML, and then it outputs something through the beginner program here. So just to looking at too much Ruby code, obviously. Basically, you can do this, hello world, just to make it something show up. And we are exposing text. And in the console, we just do Elm reactor. It's on port 8000 on localhost. Go to here. And you can see that it shows you information about your, so this is really annoying. So it shows you information about your package here, the helpful summary. The version, Elm is very different. It actually does try and enforce semantic versioning. And it can do that because it compiles down and it has its own syntax. So it can actually go through and see, oh, hey, you actually defined a new function. You probably want to bump up a version of this package. Or you didn't really do much, so don't bump up the version. It shows the dependencies here. And the cool thing is with these dependencies, it will actually link you straight to the docs for them. So you can open up, I'm going to leave the docs open because they are kind of useful. You can open up an Elm file. It'll compile it. It's building the project. It might take a little bit of time at first because it has to build the core, it has to build HTML, virtual DOM, and everything else. And it actually does tell you it needs some extra time to download packages. So that's always fun. So you can see it displays hello world. And that's just from this piece of code, right? So it has a main function, displays hello world, cool. So now we do this, and it's going to complain. So one thing that's nice about Elm is that you will see an actual compiler message. So it's looking for some stuff here. Main is equal to whatever. Oh, I forgot to give it a parameter, right? So this is all basic stuff you'll start running into in Elm. And this is why I like it as well, because it does give you this hand holding. And it does say, oh, you haven't defined model. Maybe that's somewhere else. Maybe you mean something else, right? So the model that we're displaying for this photo grid is going to, let's actually define a type alias for the model. So we're displaying a bunch of photos. And the syntax here is type alias. You're saying that this record type, everything in curly braces is a record, and it has multiple fields. So this is kind of old school terminology where you have records, they have fields. And then here we're saying that anything that looks like this is a model, is the model for this photo grid page. So you can pass in a record. So model, you can define the model like this, where you say, oh, it's actually explicitly this model, right? Or you can just do this photos equals, there's no photos right now, so that's great. And this record will be inferred as this model type. So when it passes it through, it looks like this here. So it'll just infer, the compiler will infer it and do the type checking that way. So you don't actually have to start writing a whole bunch of types for it. And then the next step is we need a view. So view takes a model and then it will display something. So the type signature there is model and then HTML message. And now we're going to be asked to define what a message is. So here we're going to say class photo grid, and then we want to map. We're going to map a photo view on a bunch of photos, right? So I was also told that the Q&A is afterward, but I'm okay with, you missed the whole setup. Okay, I guess I'll just start from basically you install Elm, install some stuff, run Elm reactor, and start typing. Like, yeah, basically if you have questions at this point, I will see it in the chat. I'll check periodically. But I will just walk through what's going to happen here. Also, we need a update function, and it takes a message, a model, and then it just outputs the model again. So the first line, we are defining the photo grid module, and it's going to expose everything in here. So model, view, update, main, they're all going to be exported. Right now, that doesn't matter. So we're just defining a module called photo grid. In the next line here, we are saying that we want to import from html.app, which is a submodule of HTML, which is the package. And we want to import the beginner program function. So beginner program gives us a way to have a model, have a view, and an update method. So the model is the data model. The view is how we're going to display that data model. And update is how the user or AJAX calls are going to interact with our model. And that's how we're going to do message passing. It's kind of like the model view controller paradigm where you have model, the view, and then the controller is handling the interactions between the user and the data. Here, Elm has decided to call it update, which is kind of more accurate because you are updating the data model if something does happen. So in the next line, we are importing text, and this is a DOM object, and this will output the HTML for the text, just a string, basically. It creates a node in the DOM tree that's a string. The next HTML tag we want is div, which we're using later on. And we also want an attribute. We want the class attribute so that we can actually define class names. So basically, you call text or div or any other function from HTML here. And we also need HTML, sorry. So use div, and it will output a DOM node that's a div. And then you can fill it up with whatever data you want, and you can specify its attributes and all that. In the next line, we're importing the class attribute. So the nice thing that Elm does for you is that it does give you a type-safe way to output HTML. So most of the time, it's just basic things like, oh, it accepts a string, right? Like a text object only accepts one string. It's outputting hello or whatever, right? But a div can actually have attributes, and it can have multiple things within it. So you can kind of start defining more complicated objects, and it'll be completely type safe. So the type checker will make sure that you're filling in the right arguments and options and everything else that you need. The attributes as well will be caught. Like if you misspell class in HTML, that won't be caught, but in Elm, it definitely will be. Well, as soon as it skips over the other things, it catches first. But basically, this is actually the most frustrating thing for me is when I'm writing JavaScript and some other languages where you start assigning to variables and you make a typo, and all of a sudden, later on, you want to use the value of that variable, but you made a typo, so nothing's there. And I actually ran into a case of that just a few days ago in JavaScript. And I was thinking, oh man, wouldn't it be nice if there was the Elm compiler here to tell me, hey, you misspelled class, right? So the next line after is we're defining the model. the actual data model we're going to display. This is the type definition. After that is the actual declaration of the variable. So the model will actually have a list of photos, and right now that list is empty. After that, we're doing, again, a type definition. It's very good practice to add type definitions. This is not strictly necessary because the inference is pretty good. It's more for your own sake, and when you're working with other people, they can quickly see, hey, I need a model here. So this function accepts a model, and then it outputs a list of DOM nodes, HTML. And message here is the message from this particular view. This ties into updating and the controller stuff I was mentioning before. So this view function, we accept the model. We're going to output a div. It's going to have a class photogrid, and then we're going to map photo view on photos. So right away, you can kind of see something is wrong here. Where did the photos come from? So we need to do this. So we can access photos from the model record. So this is all pretty straightforward. And afterward, we have an update. So when somebody clicks something, maybe a message is sent to update the model. And then we have to update the display based on that. In this case, we're always just going to return the same model because we're not going to update anything. In main, this is our main entry point. We're going to call beginner program. We're going to pass in one argument, which is this whole record. And this record has 3 fields, model view update, and we just pass in what we've already defined. So it was complaining about photo not being defined, so we can do that. Type photo. Actually, what I'm going to do is types.elm. So we create a new module called types, and it is exposing everything. And then we define a new type alias called photo, and it looks like, I don't know, we have a URL. We have a username, whoever owns that photo, the location, the like count, the comment count, and this is actually an int, the comment count, which is also an int, and the comments, which is a list of comments. And obviously, we just define a new type called list or called comment. So where does that come from? We got to define another type here. And one thing that I really appreciate here is that with Elm, it feels like, oh, I defined a function and it takes these types, and then you're kind of almost immediately led to define, hey, here's my type and here's what it should hold. In contrast to other languages where you're kind of, oh, it's JavaScript. Let me just have an object and fill it up with whatever I want, and maybe I'll add things later on and maybe add some fields, remove some fields, and later on you have almost every function checking, hey, is this field even defined? Whereas here I'm just, okay, great, let's comment. Now I define that, start using it. If something's not specified, the Elm compiler will definitely complain. So I'm kind of safe there, so I can just keep typing and not worry about it. I'm going to define an example photo, and what did I have before? URL equals webinar add .png, and then we have a username, and that'll be Rodolfo. Location is whatever, Canada, same thing. And then like count will be 100. Comment count will be 20. Comments will be repeating 10 times, or actually 12 times an example comment, right? And then we define an example comment, and that looks like username, person. And then message is hello world. So here we just define a type, We're going to import that. We're going to import photo and comment. So this is kind of a best practice where you start defining explicitly what you're importing. You don't always have to do that. In this case, it's really helpful too. So we're going to import the example photo because our list is going to be, let's do 3x4. So example photo, and then you're done. I think the whole thing is being recorded. Is on. Can I kill somebody's mic or not? Is there a way to do this? Okay. Okay, cool. The screen is appearing correctly, right? Everything looks all right here? Okay, awesome. So we need to reload, and it can't find repeat, and repeat comes from list. So I'm going to stop here for a quick second and show you the Elm core libraries. This documentation is for all the basics, the data structures that come with Elm. So this is all the core stuff that you get almost immediately with Elm, right? This is all the HTML stuff you get with Elm. So let's look at the core. So I have a list, and I am repeating. I'm going to look for it this way, repeat. So the repeat function takes an int of whatever type and then returns a list of whatever type with n copies of that value. So in our case, we have repeat. We're making 12 example photos, and it'll return a list of 12 example photos, right? And in the example photo, we have repeat again. We're going to return 12 example comments, which are these guys. So it's just the list as well. And we need to import repeat here as well. So right now what we've done is we have the types that we defined on one side here in the module types, and that's types.elm. And we are importing lists and exposing the repeat function, which will give us a repetition of a value n times. Next, we're defining a type alias. It's a type alias because a record doesn't really have a type. We're saying if it looks like this, then it's definitely a photo. So photo has all these fields. And then we're also defining another type alias, which is comment. So if any record is passed through that looks like this, it has a username and a message, it's a comment. Next is defining an example photo. So we just give it whatever stuff here. I've already prepared webinar add, and just copy it there. So we're going to go back to the actual photo grid. So we imported the types now. Now we can talk about this. We have an example photo, and now we have to actually do something with it. So, oops. So map is another thing that comes through from the list, core list module. So this is just mapping a function to a list of objects and then returning the results of mapping. So in this example, it applies not to true, which is false, not to false, which is true, and so on. And there's other examples of mapping functions like map, map2, map3, so combining multiple lists. In our case, we just want to map, we are mapping the photo view, which we haven't defined yet, to the photos. So we have 12 example photos. And for each one, it's going to do whatever we define in photo view. So let's take a crack at defining photo view. So we have a photo. And actually, I can do a type definition here as well. So it takes a photo, and then it outputs HTML message, right? That makes sense. We're taking in a photo, and we're outputting some HTML for it. So we say class photo, and then we are going to just display an image. So the first argument to div are the attributes, right? Attributes, the same is true here. The first argument to image are attributes, and that's basically all you need for an image. It's always, image / source equals hello, and then you just close the tag immediately. So to do that here, we do this, right? So the equivalent here is class equals photo, and then do some stuff, right? So for this, to replicate what we have in HTML here, with Elm, we do this. Source and webinar add.png. So you can see that it closes the tag, it has one attribute, and then you're done. And now we just close this. So that's like the div. Clean that up a bit. And it'll do that 12 times. I hope. Oh, so here is, I can't find the variable image. So if you look through it, oh, this is a misspelling, maybe it's something else, right? Or it could be html.image. So we're going to we're already importing a bunch of stuff from HTML. We have a text node, we have a div, and now we need the image HTML element class, or type, not class. And we also need source. So we're going to import source from attributes. So again, as I said before, the coolest thing and the best thing and safest thing about Elm is that typos don't really happen because you have a compiler to check them, and you're explicitly importing HTML attributes. So if it doesn't exist as an HTML attribute in the HTML attributes package, it'll just fail. It'll just say, oh, this doesn't exist. And you can't compile this, it's an invalid program, and you're done. Whereas with basically any other templating language, just define whatever you want immediately, and we won't do any type checking. So if you accidentally use it the wrong way, well, too bad. And you'll only find out at runtime. Here, you'll find out immediately when it tries to compile. So another thing that we need to define are messages. Or I'll take care of the map issue first. So again, this is the mapping thing that we talked about. We're importing map and repeat. These are list functions. They take in some number and a list, or some function and a list, and return a list. And so there's a whole bunch of them on the Elm site here. So I'll just toss that in the chat. So we took care of that issue, and now we have something called message. So as I mentioned before, you have the concept of model, view, and controller in other frameworks. With Elm, you have the concept of model, view, and update. So with a model, it's your data model. With view, we're taking the model and displaying it in some way, right? In this case, we have a div, it's a photo grid, it maps out each photo with the photo view function and just displays the image. Next, we have something called update. And update lets you, you click something and something else should happen. So the way Elm deals with that is by sending messages, and messages can have arguments. I don't know if people are familiar with Angular or with Ember.js. What you usually do there I know for Ember, you have things called actions. So you click something, and then it triggers an action in your component, and then your component takes some arguments, and then you have to figure out whether or not to send it up to another component or something else, right? So it's kind of similar to that, where our update will get called with a particular message type and with our current data model. So at the time of like clicking something, this is our current data model. What do you want to do with it? Right now for the photo grid, we don't want to really do anything, but we still have to define the message type. So we can do that up here. Type message equals nothing, I think, is possible here. Or am I complaining? Yeah. Okay, it doesn't complain. And you can see there's no styling. Absolutely zero styling for this guy. But there's 12 of me. So that's kind of cool. So that's basically, what is that? 35 lines in one file, 32 in the other, and the other one is just some example stuff. So it's pretty straightforward to do this and get going. We were just typing along. Now all of a sudden we have a photo type, we have a comment type, we have a way to display it, right? One thing I want to do is, because we want to use this in another page, we want to maybe separate out how we're doing the photo grid. So this whole thing can turn into photo grid view. And we're passing in model of photos, right? So we have this photo grid view, and it takes a list of photos and it outputs HTML message. And photos equals that. And then you're good to go. So all this is used for testing with Elm Reactor. So when you run Elm Reactor, I'm going to show you guys again what it is. It's basically the interactive tool. It's your REPL. It is your read, eval, print loop, but for Elm. So it's like the live reload for JavaScript and Webpack and all that stuff. I know for most JavaScript projects, you end up having, here's a little web server. It runs this HTML and it runs something else or whatever, CSS compiler you need and things like that. And then you can just try it out. So Elm has the same thing. You just type in Elm Reactor. And now it's on local host 8000. And we go there, and that's this guy. So it looks like this. There's a little home button to go back there. Package information, your deps, the dependencies. It links straight to the documentation for whatever dependencies you have. You can click this. It'll serve whatever static files there are. It created an Elm package.json with all the dependencies here. So it looks kind of similar to package.json for NPM, except a little bit more, well, you can see how strict it is with the versions. Basically, the code that I'm writing here, in the next version of Elm, it may or may not work. So I would have to upgrade it, and it will definitely check if I try and use Elm version 19 or 18.1 or 18.0, and it'll just crash out and say, hey, you can't run these versions. So it actually does respect semantic versioning. But that's kind of a tangent. So we have types. Types doesn't do anything. There's no main entry point for it. So there's nothing to show on the screen. So it tells you about that. The next thing is photo grid. And again, compiling it, it compiles the Elm file into a JS file. You can inspect it, or viewed page source probably. So here's some HTML. Here's the title of the file. It imports some font family. It has some other style that it sets up. It has a Reactor, loading screen and all that stuff. And then it says run Elm program, which is the compiled version. And then you're good to go. So it's all kind of, this is your REPL, and it's kind of neat to be able to separate out working on the actual components versus the styling. And if you, like with Instagram, most of this stuff is styling. Like making a grid and the HTML behind this is, it's pretty straightforward. It's just the styling is where you're going to devote a lot of time for different screens and all that. So it's kind of nice with Elm where, okay, yeah, sure, it's a photo and it looks kind of shitty to have the whole grid look like this, but at least I'm not worried about the looks. I'm just making sure everything functions okay. So the next part is basically the photo view. So we have opened up photoview.elm, and we're exposing everything, and we're importing types because we have to display photos and comments, and we don't need example photo, right? And now we also import html.app, exposing. Actually, we may want an example photo. So again, same steps. We're setting up our main function. And we're passing in a model, passing in a view, and passing in an update function. So the model will look like we will be displaying a photo. So we need a photo. Actually, we should do this. We should define the model like this. So that way we don't have to actually start filling in blank values yet. So we're going to display a photo. And we're going to display, what else do we need? Actually, that's pretty much it. For this photo view, all we need is the photo. We don't need comments yet. We don't need anything else. And then we define the model. And the model is photo equals example photo. And you're done. And then we are going to display this. So the view, the type definition is we take a model and we display HTML message. So in this case, we are displaying one photo, and we'll call this photo view. This is the wrapper for the whole view. And we will have the photo view, which is similar to this guy here. So we can actually just take this, move it over into here. So I'm going to explain it again. Basically, we've already defined how to show one photo in this grid of photos, right? So here we have a grid of photos, but each one is a separate function called photo view, right? And now we moved it from the photo grid to the photo view component. So I'm going to call it a component, but it's actually just a package. So it's the photo view module package. And what we're going to do here is we want to use that photo view, right? So we can do something like this, where we import from photo view, we're going to import the photo view. It's a little redundant and repetitive, but that's just the way it is. So the photo view displays a photo, and we, on the photo grid, we reuse that. So the class structure will look, for CSS classes, it'll look like this, photo grid.photo. And when we're viewing the photo, we want the same thing. So in this case, it'll be photo.photo. So that way you can reuse these class names, and you're reusing the same function and the same DOM tree. You're reusing the same HTML. So everything looks the same, and it's easier. It's just reusability in general is great, right? And it's just easier to deal with here. And you have little piecemeal parts that you can reuse, right? So we don't need that. We don't need that. We save this, and then we do photo view on the model. And then that should be that, at least on the photo grid side. So we also need an update. Right now, nothing's happening. So we just do this. and we say, hey, return the model, don't touch it, just return it as it is. So there's that. It's gonna complain because I haven't imported a whole bunch of stuff. So it's complaining, I can't find the div. Great, just gotta import it. Can't find class, gotta import it. Image, imported it as well. Source, import HTML. Everything is just because I forgot that I have to import everything that I need in my photo view component. Exposing HTML, there's no text, there's div, there's an image, import HTML.attributes, exposing class and source. So the reason I typed it out is because I wanted to make sure that I don't have too much stuff. Like I'm going to look for text. Text is not used. It's only used in one place. Better get rid of it. Elm will actually tell you if you're not using some of these types, but it's best to kind of prune it yourself and make sure that you're only using what you need. And it's best to be explicit. It's kind of like dealing with Python or other languages. You kind of import whatever, but import exactly these three functions. So we have that, and we have HTML. We have message is not defined, so we got to define that. So right now, again, there's no messages. We're going to be adding a way to, whoa, okay. HTML message. Model of photos, example photo, photo view, photos, and it's a list. So where did we go wrong here? So the type annotation doesn't match. So it's saying I need to take in a model and then I need to output something, right? And what we're outputting is sort of kind of the wrong thing here. So we need to say photo view is taking a photo. There's this on photo view, line 22. And this is this guy. So we're doing this. One cool thing that you can do is this, where you say, hey, I just need one field from that record. So model looks like this, but we only need the one field. So why not just unwrap it and toss it into this variable? So again, the same thing happened here. Just used the wrong type annotation. We're taking a list of photos. We're outputting the HTML, but actually it's saying you're outputting the photo view message. That's one small issue here, is that if you start annotating types, you're going to be doing possibly the wrong thing, right? So in this case, what we have is we have a photo grid, and a photo grid has to embed a photo view, right? So you click on a picture, and then the photo view should be opening. So we need a list of photos displaying here, and this particular message is kind of basically, since you're embedding one component within another, the messages that that component receives have to be mapped for the parent component to be able to react to it. So it has to know, okay, when you click on this photo, something should happen, and this message is defined in photo view just for this one object, right? It's just defined in this one package for, okay, these message types are defined here. There's none of them, but actually the type signature does match, because when we have a photo grid view, we have a photo view, and a photo view doesn't take the same message type as the photo grid. So one thing we have to do is not just map, we have to map that, and then we have to pass in, maybe we can just do this. I have a feeling that we can. Doesn't match the definition, photo view message. What's this? Oh, because the inference will still catch it, or not. Okay. So what we can do is we define generic messages. So in types, I'm going to define I'm going to define some generic messages here. So right now it's nothing. So this can be reused. We can import message from type, and that way everything's the same across the board. From types again. Yeah. Okay, so this is one thing that you will, okay, we're looking at photo grid still. We go back, reload, we got photo grid, we have photo view, we have types. So we go to photo view, it builds its own little message. You know, we can inspect it, and we can see there is a photo view with that class name photo view, class photo, and within it, the image, right? So this is actually a very, very important topic. Where's the Elm book? Architecture. In one of these books, I think it's this one, there is, it talks about basically dealing with multiple components. So when you click something here, right, it sends a message called open photo, and it passes in that particular photo, and then it should launch this photo view. When you click the X here, it should close that photo view, and it sends that particular message. So when you're hooking up components in other frameworks like React, like Angular, like Ember, what you have is you define your photo view component, and it is just nested. Like all these little parts are nested. Like the sidebar could be another component that's nested. It has a follow button, and that's also nested. The follow button could be a separate component entirely, right? And it's passing in these messages, and then it has to pass them back and forth to its parent component, and then that has to pass it back to another component, right? So you have all this message passing happening. In Elm, it's something that I didn't really consider at first. Basically, instead of nesting components, you're reusing the functions that render the same view, and then you're passing in whatever messages you need to send. So basically here we have, in our types, we have a certain message, and we're going to define one type called open photo, and it will take a photo. And then we have closed photo. We'll call it closed photo view, maybe, right? Nah, let's stick to closed photo. And then another thing we can have is load more comments. So if we have a list of 20 comments, right? Like here, there's a bunch of comments, something needs to happen to load more of them, perhaps, right? Like maybe there's too many. Like here, view all 140 comments, right? So when you click it, it'll send a message called load more comments. And then in the update method, in the update function that we've defined right here, perhaps, it'll react to that message and say, hey, load more comments. Maybe I should update the model to display more comments, right? So you would take this and you would say something like case message of, and you're saying load more comments. Then you will say you will be updating the model, which is just the photo, right? And the photo has comments, and you will be taking the comments list and adding an example comment, right? So just to simplify things, anytime we say load more comments, we're just going to add a new comment, right? So this appends the list comment to the comments list of the model, right? And actually, you got to assign it. There's no quick shortcut here. And right now, when we have open photo has an argument, and then what it's going to do is say, hey, in this photo view, our photo looks like whatever, right? Photo is equal to photo, right? And close photo means photo is equal to nothing, right? And on the grid, we're going to also deal with this. So when we're isolating the, okay, so we have to deal with these messages here and update the model accordingly. And we're going to do the same for PhotoGrid. So case message of load more comments. It shouldn't actually do anything because it doesn't need to do anything, right? We're on the PhotoGrid. What does it know about individual photo comments? It doesn't know anything about them. Open Photo, however, it does know something about. So we can update the model there and say, hey, let's show photo opened equals photo, right? And then when you close the photo, we're going to say model photo opened equals nothing, right? So you click on something in the photo grid, it opens up the photo. You click the X button, it closes the photo. Great, updates the model, you're done. So again, we're viewing all this stuff in the Elm reactor. And when we're doing that, it gives us a nice, quick way. We just define a main function. We define an example data model with an example photo, and we can check out how one component looks and how one component interacts. So it looks ugly because there's no CSS whatsoever. But it's really valuable because you can show the photo view component with the example photo, the example comments, and also do all this nice stuff here, right? You can do everything here and mess about with it and say, oh, when you open a photo, do pretty much the same thing as here, right? When you're loading more comments, you can do something else, right? So you can deal with that in certain ways. And you can just mess around with one component rather than I need to embed this, and then I need to embed that, and then I can finally work with both of them together and test the one component by going through the other one. You'll notice I haven't written a single test yet. This is probably not the best thing to do. It's really not advised, but it's kind of nice because you do have the compiler to catch like the typos, the type errors, and everything else. So it kind of holds your hand as you're writing the code, rather than, oh, I need to write a test because I need to make sure these things are called. But in this case, it's kind of different where it's like, okay, I'm writing this and then something else needs to happen, and Elm will tell me that, oh, actually I didn't call it correctly because, I didn't pass in the right arguments or right type or whatever, right? So this should compile okay. And message, its use of type variable photo. Where is that? That's in types, type photo. What did I do here? So I have photo view message like photo. No, that's not it. So I did write this stuff before. When you're typing in, when you're creating new types, you actually do want to capitalize because you're saying, here's my new type, and this is something else, some other variable that it has with a different type. And then you want to say, when you're actually handling it, the case is I have this type, and it has this particular parameter, and it's of a type photo, right? Same is true of close photo. We're actually doing nothing there. Yeah. Comments, and we want to actually import. I think it's message dot. No, oops, it's types. So we'll just do this where we have a little more comments. open photo, close photo, right? We have message type that we're dealing with, and then the same is true basically here. Awesome. Load more types does not expose load more types. Okay. How did I deal with this before? Oops, wrong one. Types.open. Types.whatever. Comments. It doesn't exist on the photo. So the model is photo. Let me see. Photo.comments. And here we do types not equal sign. That's weird. So we have to define this. Or no, we don't. We already have a photo model. What did I do here? So we're updating the model. We're updating the photo comments. And we are saying, maybe we can do this. Or we say photo equals, oh, right, model dot, right, photo dot comments. Right, so we're handling it here. It's photo view, updating, load more comments, update the comments in the photo, and add some more to it, right? So it could be, boy. So what we can do is say new photo, let new photo equals model dot photo comments equals whatever. Right? So let's try that. Equals that plus that, and then we're done. And then new photo equals new photo. Oh, Jesus. Okay, well, the type checker is way smarter than me, apparently, because I'm missing something here. So that kind of sucks. So loading more comments. We're not taking any arguments in. The easiest thing to do is just, for now, on this photo view, we can just types load more comments. We'll just ignore it. We need the backing of an API server anyway. That's something that will come up in the second half of this. And the second half is just going to be a tutorial I'm writing for Codementor. So it'll be published in the next week, very soon. Along with the code for this will be online. So I've already written some of this. I'm refactoring it to use a more flat structure like I'm trying to attempt here. Basically, okay, so let's skip ahead to some of the code I've already written for this. So we can take a look at photo grid. And I actually did it in main. So I've already went ahead and wrote some of this code before, just for this situation. So we can go to Elm Reactor again. What I like is that I didn't really have to, you just type in Elm Reactor and you go and you kind of, okay, cool. There's this, and now there's a whole bunch of things happening here. It's a clone of Instagram written in Elm. We depend on HTML, core, navigation. Navigation is a library that does, it handles routing to some extent. So it lets you change the location, and it lets you change where you are on a page. So it does some basic routing for you. So here we have a copyright or README, and we have a whole bunch of stuff happening already. So we can look at the main file. It'll build it. Yeah, it builds it. It has the photo data. It has the title of whatever tag we're looking at, just like this guy, right? Sorry, that was a little quick. So I will scroll to. So we have the tag, we have the number of posts, we have the top posts, and then that's the grid, right? Here, we also have this happening. We have the grid, great. And then we have a modal showing up. That's kind of cool, right? And then if we click X, it closes the modal. So it doesn't look very good. There's no CSS or anything. And this is just an Elm reactor. You can focus on just dealing with, okay, does it even work? And apparently, yes, it does. So we have the photo that we're opening up in the photo modal, the data of it, the comments, and then loading more comments and all that. We click X, it closes it. So I'll show you the actual code for this. So in Instant Elm, we have this module. We're calling it main. We're importing the photo view, which I did have open. So this is the photo view. So the module is called main. We're exposing everything. Great. Importing the photo view, exposing the two types. So here I just toss the types into the same file because you don't really need a type file. We're using a beginner program. We need div, text, image, span, all these imports, right? One cool import that we need is onClick. So not only does Elm check attributes, it also checks events like onClick and onBlur and everything else. And that's how you hook into events and making something actually happen. And then again, more list functions. So we have two types here. We can open up a photo and it accepts a photo, or we can close a photo, right? So when we click the X, it sends the message open photo. When we click on an image, it sends open photo. When we click on the X, it sends the close photo message. So the type we're displaying is the name of the tag, the number of photos there are in total, the actual list of photos we're displaying. And then here's something called the maybe type. And maybe types are the way to avoid null and avoid nil. Basically, in other languages, like JavaScript, if you're not checking for null and undefined, you're going to be in a lot of trouble because at some point somebody's going to do the wrong thing and enter some undefined value that you haven't even thought of, handling, and then it'll just break everything else. Like I said last week, there was a null from a typo. I tried to define a variable. I typoed. It set it as null. But in the template language, it was like, oh, if it's null, I'll just display it as a blank. So I spent maybe 15 minutes just hunting down one typo. So with maybe, what it says is maybe there's a photo. Maybe the photo is defined, or maybe it's nothing, right? So when we open up the photo will be defined. When we close it, the photo opened will be set to nothing. So there's no photo to display. Next is new comments. If you want to add a new comment, it'll start off as blank, right? So again, we have a bunch of fake data that we're dealing with here with our component. Right now, we start with nothing. This is what I just talked about, where once we click on a photo, we're going to have to update the model for the photo opened field to be set to whatever photo we clicked. So the view is going to be more interesting. So we display a body. The body is going to be the profile info, which is the name that we have, hashtag Elm, and the photo count. So we have the photo count. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever. And then we are also going to display the photo grid. So we have a photo grid function and a profile info function. So you kind of can see, hey, okay, in our body, we just are displaying the profile info. We're displaying the photo grid, and then we're done. That's your component. So all you have to do is look for the definition of this function, and you can see exactly which HTML it's going to spit out. And you can also see if it's going to spit out any, like if it needs to interact, if it has any actions, if it's going to send messages, right? So here we're defining the body ahead of time because we want to have, we want to do two different things. So we always want to display the profile info, and we always want to display the photo grid. The one thing we're unsure about is whether or not to display the photo view, you know, like the big screenshot, the big view of the photo, right, with its comments and everything. So here we're going to say, okay, if there's no photo opened, like you haven't clicked on any photo yet, we should not show that modal. We should just show the photo grid and the profile info. So it says, okay, just plain old div, you know, plain old div with the profile info and photo grid. In the other case, if there is something, we use just to say that there's a value. We pass it in here, and we say, okay, so there was a photo opened. And let's grab the photo view, display it, and the syntax here is a way of displaying or doing things quickly. It's just convenience. So instead of doing div and then append body and then repeat one and then photo view model dot new comment photo opened, where like you can already see this is kind of a hassle where, you know, bracketing everything, and then all of a sudden we pass in the actual parameter we care about, right? So the I'm not sure what to call it, maybe the flag syntax here, it will the pipe flag, whatever. So you have a photo opened, it pipes it into photo view model.new comment as the last argument. So photo opened is here, and then it pumps in this whole thing into repeat one. So we're repeating it once, and then it appends it to the body. So the reason I do repeat once is just to construct a list. I'm sure that there's a better way of doing it. So I'm going to extract the photo view, append it to the body. So then we'll have basically profile info, photo grid, and then photo view, right? So initially it starts off with the first two, and then it has the rest added on. And then we display it in a div, just like here. So it's the same thing. There might be a nicer way of doing this, but this is actually pretty nice already, where it's, okay, taking an open photo, we're displaying it in this way, appending it to the body, done, right? So now we can go to photo view and see how it actually looks. We're taking the new comment, which is going to be blank at first. You know, you type in whatever you want if you want to do that, and taking the photo opened. So we toss this in, and we're using the other view. So our photo view function is going to create a new model that will be passed into the photo view. Where is that? Photo view, right here. So this whole thing here is how we display one photo. So to show you guys what that is, that's basically when we click here, it's this guy. This is the photo view. So this whole thing is basically this guy. This is the photo view Elm file, and it defines the view function, and it takes in a particular model. And the model it takes in is this guy, and it needs a photo, it needs a new comment, and it needs to know whether or not to show the close button. So it takes that model in, it defines the photo HTML, so it renders out the photo, right? renders out the photo, and then it defines the sidebar, which is this stuff. So it has a photo, and then on the right, it will have the sidebar. Here it's below. And then it defines the rest of the HTML. So whether or not it should show the close button. When you're doing a full screen view, like on Instagram, of just one photo, it's not a modal. There's no close button, right? In this case, we have a photo grid, right? We clicked on a photo, and now we have to be able to click X to close it, right? So if the show close button is true, we are going to display the photo, the sidebar, and the close button. If it's false, just display the photo and sidebar, right? And then we just pass that in. So again, little functions defined, and then we just have to follow the trail of them. So we look for photo HTML. Photo HTML is defined there as photo, and it's this guy. So photo returns an image with particular class photo, which has a particular source as well, right? So it's a photo URL that we passed in. And that's it. When we go back, here's a sidebar. So this guy, sidebar. Where's that defined? Right here, right? So this guy. So sidebar, photo is, we're taking in one argument. It's a photo. We're displaying HTML in the end of it. So we have the div, CSS class sidebar. We divided it up further into top of the sidebar, the count, the comments. So these are just convenience functions. In other cases, you would just be like, okay, here's my sidebar. I'm going to just dump in a whole bunch of HTML. Like if you look at sidebar top, right, the top of the sidebar, which is this guy, my name and the location of the photo, and then this stuff as well. What it'll say is we go to sidebar top, and sidebar top looks like this. So we have a user. So we display the username, and we display the location. So it's like just nesting HTML stuff. And then we also have two actions that we can take, follow button and like button, right? So we go to follow button. What does that look like? Okay, it's a div with a class. And then display some text. We go to like button. Okay, it's a like button. Something happens when you click, you can handle events. You send a message like photo, and then you handle that in your update method, right? Your update function will handle that. So everything here, the cool thing about Element is everything is a function, and that's what you're dealing with. Everything is functions dealing with records, and you're updating models. They're all immutable. It's very, like I was saying, once you start typing, you're kind of like, okay, I kind of sort of know what I'm doing here, and then, oh, this is not defined yet. Okay, great. Let me just define some kind of placeholder. Let me just do something else with it, right? So we have this like button. We click like photo, something happens. So that's kind of the definition of the sidebar, the top of the sidebar. Further down, we have the definition of the sidebar count. So we have the number of likes, the number of comments, and displaying that. More complicated one is this, sidebar comments. We have a number of comments in total, and then we have a page size. So we're going to paginate through it, right? So we just say, okay, there's 1 million comments, and each page is whatever. So there's this many pages. So we kind of want to know where we're at. So we can display the load more items or not. So if on the last page, or on the first page, or there's only one page, sorry. If there's only one page, we just display the comment list. If there's more than one page, we just load more items. Again, displaying a comment, great. Just pass it in. It's a div, some class stuff, and some CSS classes, and then you're done. So to kind of deconstruct this, it's basically a photo view, displays a photo, it displays a sidebar, it does this with the case, right? And then you're good to go. And that would be, so types doesn't exist. Photo view, instant home live, we don't need. Photo grid, we don't need as well. So the other part to this is having an index page. And actually, I'll do this because this is also very important. So basically, you need to make, you need to compile Elm into a JS file as well. So what you can see is here, we just turned off the reactor, right? We do make, and then we say photo main.elm, header.elm, photo view.elm, in full screen. Or actually, I'll make it simpler. So we want to do elm make, and we want to do main.elm, and then we do the output into whatever.js, right? So we just compiled the main module, and the main module has, it imports the photo view, it has its own display in the view, displays the profile info, the photo grid, and when you click open, it displays the photo view, right? So it has already imported everything it needs to. It's imported all these modules, and I hope that it's done enough tree shaking that there's very little dead code in the JavaScript that's generated. I'm not sure how good it is. I haven't checked that thoroughly yet, but basically when you compile, it's going to import all the modules you need, and then you're done. So we can open that, whatever.js, and we can see, okay, these are some Elm functions, whatever. And at the bottom, somewhere here, it defines something called main. So that's the main function that we made here, the main module, right? So we have main, and it's defined in our JavaScript. So basically that JavaScript is actually good to go in our index file. So I can probably do whatever.js, comment this stuff because it doesn't exist. And what we're doing here is we're importing the JavaScript file that was generated, whatever.js. We had compiled main.elm into it, which imported photo view and imported other functions and created a whole bunch of HTML for us. And when we load up whatever.js, it will load up all the Elm modules that we're using, plus the photo view component that we defined and all its types and things, plus everything else we define in main.elm, right? So it's just one JavaScript file that you import, and it has all the modules that you want in it. And then what you have to do is you grab a node, and we're just doing it by ID. We define div right here, and then we grab it, and then we embed it. So Elm actually lets you do a full screen view so that it would just take over the whole page. You can also embed it. And I think there's one other one where the Elm module does not display anything, but it does get loaded up. So you can define API calls. You can define any other services you need and import it. So you're working with a type-safe language that looks kind of like Haskell. And you're not dealing with JavaScript craziness of like, oh, a typo, and then everything blows up, right? So with Elm, there's a few different ways of dealing with it, and they're really conscious of the fact that a lot of people can't try new frameworks all the time. Like with Angular, it's kind of, you're not going to be dealing with one or two components. You're going to end up dealing with, here's a whole app, and it does a lot of things. In this case, it's, oh, here, cool, we have a photo grid, and we're embedding it at this node, and then we're done. And also, whatever.js has everything we need. So we can start using it in a real project. We can replace existing components and existing frameworks piecemeal rather than going all the way. So we can take a look at how that works by doing, we'll just do Elm Reactor. Go here and go to index.html. So you can see there's some styling stuff that's happening or not happening. Wait a second. Oops. That's the right style. I was working on a different example. Okay, so there's no header in the one or two of the. I think in the example video that I had, there's a header. That's what I actually just commented out. So the header, we can take a look at that as well. So we define it. This is where the logo happens. There's a search box and there's links. So it's very, this is what I really enjoy about working with Elm, is that you're not tempted to take on too much, and you're almost immediately defining new functions to display certain small things, right? Like a logo, great. A logo is actually, you know, it's a H1 tag plus some text plus the small slogan, right? A search box is actually an input thing with, you know, type text placeholder, and it has an action on input. Something needs to happen once you start typing, right? So instead of looking at that, you're just like, oh, okay, here's the view and it displays the stuff, and I don't really have to. You can start treating things as black boxes more, rather than being like, oh, this component has all these things in it. I have no idea what they are. Whereas here, it's like, okay, it has a bunch of stuff, but there's no clutter of like the JavaScript type with the syntax. There's no weird typing like with TypeScript or with Flow, where you're like having this weird syntax in there just to make sure the types checks are working correctly, right? So there's kind of, everything's much cleaner.
Что, блядь, что? Просто, блин, словами объясни. Что? Что я не так сделал? Что ты от меня хочешь?
So basically,
просто скажи словами, господи.
I tossed in some CSS to make it look good.
Что? Что мне достать?
And it just loads up, right? So we clicked it, and the message that was passed was photo open. And when we click open photo, when we click on a photo, right, it opens up the photo by passing in this message, open photo, right? So we look at each photo item that we're displaying. You click on a photo, and it sends that message, and it goes to update. And we look at the message types, we look at open photo, and we update photo open with just that photo. So it's not null, right? And then it opens up, and you're good to go. When you click, it goes through close photo, which is defined in photo view, and then you're good to go. So we just embedded main. Everything's compiled. There's some CSS for desktop, laptop that I was working on, and it's very, it's pretty straightforward once you get it going to be like, okay, great, I'm passing in this message, and it's actually for a subcomponent, and that's fine because I can handle that in my parent component, and then I can do whatever else I need to. So it's kind of, I don't know. At this point, I think I've kind of demonstrated how Elm works and functions, and it forces you into a nice model view update paradigm, and it forces you into writing small functions to render small parts of your interface and then piece them together. And by doing that, you can reuse all these pieces, which is something you don't really find in other frameworks where, like with Ember, I've always had this choice of, well, do I need to write a new component? I guess it's not, because if I write a new component, I have to write tests for it. I have to write all this other code for it. I have to make sure it gets imported correctly and used correctly. I have to do my own type checking and make sure the arguments are correct, right? I have to make sure the properties I'm passing to the component are correct. And it seems to be the case with Elm or with React as well, where it's, I need these properties. They have to look kind of sort of right, and you know, you don't have as much safety, even though it wants to provide more safety. Like I know people who work with React every day, and they end up using Redux. They use Immutable.js or Nuclear, and they also use Flow. And they, of course, you use Webpack to package everything up. But with Elm, everything's pretty much already there. You just have to learn a new syntax and get used to that, and get used to the fact that you have all this safety around the language. So I guess I will open this to questions at this point. So you can type in the box, which is probably the easiest way. I'll repeat the question, and then I will answer it. And we can look at further code or whatever. I know this has not been the best way to walk through this stuff, but there's kind of a lot to cover because it's all very new to everybody. I mean, Elm is maybe 4 years old, but it's still very new, and a lot of people are I don't know, maybe it's because it's JavaScript, but people are more willing to learn React than to learn something that looks like Haskell. So I just wanted to cover like the basics, and I hope it has been solid enough that you guys are kind of interested in Elm and want to try it out. So if you have any questions, just type in the Zoom group chat. How did I happen upon using Elm? I saw a video of the time-traveling debugger. Basically, because in Elm, you have all of the state that you're going to display. You have your models that are being displayed. You can replicate everything in every step, so you know exactly how the model looks after you click. I clicked open photo, right? That changed the model in some way. So you can get a diff of that, and you can get a diff for like the delta for each step. So you can get each step that you've taken along the way as the model changes. So you could debug just by walking through those steps. So all you have to do is just keep saving the model in a list, and then replay that list, and you can see exactly what has happened, right? With other frameworks, you can't really do that. What's the question? Any other questions? Yes? No? Okay, cool. So I'm going to post the code for this online. I already have Insta Elm. It's on GitLab. I'm going to make it public right now, I guess, if it logs me on. And basically, it's going to be this guy. And give me a second. I will fix the repo to make it public. Predicted branches. Edit project. And save somewhere. Okay, cool. So, okay. Well, GitLab doesn't want to cooperate today, but all the code is online. And that's basically where it's going to be. Once I make it public, you can take a look at it. I have a refactoring branch where I'm trying to flatten out the components. Right now, it's taking the component, passing the messages, and handling them in weird ways. I have a branch to nest that, or to flatten it, not to nest. And then I wanted to do some other cool stuff with it. The tutorial for Codementor will be covering how to use an API, how to use the HTTP stuff with Elm, so you can actually grab real data, how to deal with everything else around flattened components rather than nested, and it should be coming out next week. Awesome. Thanks for watching. I'm Rudolph. I've written another Elm tutorial in Codementor if you want to take a look at that as well.